There is a certain kind of tiredness that sleep does not fix, a weariness that lives in the mind, where thoughts circle endlessly, replaying conversations, predicting outcomes, solving problems that have not yet arrived. If that feels familiar, it is because the mind has forgotten how to rest. Overthinking does not come from intelligence. It comes from responsibility taken too far, from the belief that if you stop monitoring everything, something will go wrong. And so the mind stays alert, tense, vigilant, long after it is needed. Just preparing, just trying to stay ahead. But preparation without peace becomes punishment. The mind was never meant to carry the future on its back. Most people think they overthink because they care too much. But the deeper cause is mistrust of timing, of guidance, of support that works unseen. And when trust weakens, thought multiplies. The mind begins to rehearse every possibility, hoping to prevent pain. Yet pain is never prevented by rehearsal. It is only multiplied in imagination. You may notice how one thought invites another, how a single worry turns into an entire story, how the body tightens as the mind tries to control what cannot be controlled. Overthinking feels active, but it is actually stuck energy, motion without movement, effort without direction. There is a reason clarity never arrives when the mind is racing. Wisdom does not shout. It waits, and it waits for quiet. The moment you try to force understanding, it retreats. Insight appears only when resistance softens. You may believe that if you stop thinking, you will lose control, but control has never been the solution. It has been the source of exhaustion. There is a deeper intelligence that already knows how things unfold. It does not panic. It does not rush. It does not argue with life. And it is always available when the mind steps aside. Overthinking is the mind trying to be protector, planner, and prophet all at once. It is a role it cannot sustain. This is why the body signals distress, tight shoulders, shallow breath, restless nights. These are not flaws. They are messages asking for release. Rest is not laziness. Rest is obedience to order. When the mind rests, guidance moves. You were never meant to figure everything out before it happens. Understanding comes in sequence, not all at once. The mind insists on certainty before peace, but peace is what allows certainty to form. When you rest the mind, you do not become careless. You become receptive. And receptivity is powerful. Most solutions appear after you stop chasing them. Most answers arrive after you stop demanding them. There is a subtle shift that happens when you release the need to resolve everything now. The breath deepens. The body softens. And thought slows not because it is suppressed, but because it is no longer needed. Overthinking fades when trust takes its place. Trust is not hoping things will work out. Trust is knowing you do not have to manage every step. You may have noticed moments when clarity arrived suddenly while walking, showering, resting, or doing something ordinary. That was not coincidence. That was the mind stepping aside. The answers you seek are not hidden. They are simply quiet. Noise drowns guidance. Rest invites it. You do not need to solve tomorrow, tonight. Tomorrow has its own intelligence. Tonight is for release. The mind rests when it feels supported, when it no longer believes it is alone in responsibility. You are allowed to set your thoughts down. You are allowed to pause the inner commentary. Nothing essential will be lost. In fact, what is essential can only be heard when the noise stops. Overthinking has convinced many that peace is earned after resolution. But peace is the doorway, not the reward. When the mind rests, fear loosens its grip. And when fear loosens, thought slows naturally. You do not have to force calm. Calm arrives when resistance ends. There is something profoundly healing about allowing the mind to be quiet without explanation, without justification, without guilt. You may think rest must be deserved, but rest is a right. The moment you stop arguing with your thoughts, they lose momentum. The moment you stop following them, they soften. The mind was designed to serve, not to dominate. When you let it rest, it returns refreshed, clearer, and more precise. You do not lose your edge by resting your mind. You regain it. Life does not require constant supervision. It requires alignment. And alignment begins when the mind agrees to be still. Stay with this message, not to analyze it, but to feel the slowing already happening. Because the moment you stop trying to think your way into peace, peace arrives quietly on its own. And when the mind finally rests, everything else begins to fall back into order, without effort, without strain, and without overthinking ever again. There is no weariness quite so exhausting as the weariness of the mind that has taken upon itself a task never intended for it. The mind was given to observe, to choose, and to direct attention, not to guard the universe, predict every outcome, or stand watch over tomorrow. Yet many live as though the safety of life itself depends upon constant thought, constant vigilance, constant rehearsal of what might go wrong. Overthinking does not arise because one is careless or idle. It arises because one is earnest. The overthinking mind is usually the responsible mind, the one that has learned to stay alert, to anticipate trouble, to prepare endlessly so nothing may catch it unaware. But responsibility carried beyond its rightful boundary becomes burden, and burden carried too long becomes fear. Fear does not always appear as panic. Often it appears as planning. It calls itself preparation, foresight, prudence. It convinces the mind that if thought relaxes even for a moment, something essential will be missed. And so thought tightens its grip, believing it must carry what divine intelligence has already arranged. I have often said that worry is faith in the wrong direction. Overthinking is worry disguised as diligence. It assumes that thought must go ahead of life and clear the way. Yet life does not respond to strain. It responds to alignment. The mind was never meant to be master. It was meant to be servant. When the servant attempts to rule, confusion follows. Thought begins to chase itself in circles, producing motion without movement, effort without result. Many who overthink believe they are protecting themselves from pain. They rehearse conversations to avoid misunderstanding. They imagine outcomes to prevent disappointment. Yet pain is never prevented by rehearsal. It is only multiplied in imagination. One may suffer 1,000 times inwardly for a single event that never occurs. The mind grows tired, not because it thinks, but because it thinks without trust. Trust is the element missing in all overthinking. When trust weakens, thought multiplies. When trust is present, thought quiets naturally. I have observed that those who trust life do not think less because they are careless, but because they are aligned. They do not need to supervise every step, for they know there is an intelligence moving ahead of them. Scripture tells us plainly, "Take no thought for the morrow." This was not counsel toward negligence, but toward obedience. It was instruction to remove thought from a position it was never meant to occupy. The morrow does not require mental supervision. It unfolds according to law. When the mind insists on carrying the future, it steals strength from the present. It exhausts today in an attempt to control tomorrow. This imbalance produces the peculiar fatigue that rest alone cannot heal. I have known many who said, "I cannot stop thinking." They believed their thoughts controlled them. In truth, they had simply forgotten how to release responsibility. The mind overthinks when it believes outcomes depend upon constant attention, It believes that if it stops monitoring, something will fall apart. Yet what truly falls apart is peace. Peace does not come from resolution, it comes from trust. Resolution follows peace, not the other way around. Most people believe they must understand everything before they can rest. This belief keeps them restless indefinitely. Understanding comes in sequence, not all at once. Law reveals only what is needed now. Trying to see too far ahead blinds the present moment. The overthinking mind is always ahead of itself. It lives in imagined futures rather than present guidance. Guidance does not shout across time. It speaks in the now. I have often seen clarity arrive when people stopped seeking it. It came while walking, resting, or attending to simple tasks. This was not chance. It was the mind stepping aside. When thought loosens its grip, wisdom rises naturally. Many fear that resting the mind means losing control, but control has never been the solution. Control is effort pretending to be safety. True safety comes from alignment with law. I have known those who controlled every detail and still lived in anxiety. I have known others who trusted quietly and were protected in remarkable ways. The difference was not circumstance, but belief. Belief determines whether thought is servant or tyrant. The mind becomes tyrant when it believes it is alone in responsibility, when it believes it must manage every outcome, when it believes no unseen help is operating. This belief produces overthinking as a survival strategy. Yet survival is not the purpose of life. Expression is. The mind must be relieved of the burden of omniscience. It was never meant to know everything in advance. It was meant to respond wisely as life unfolds. Overthinking is the refusal to trust sequence. Sequence is law. I have observed that the most peaceful individuals are not those who have solved everything, but those who trust what has not yet been solved. Trust is not hoping things will work out. It is knowing that work is already being done unseen. The mind relaxes when it knows it is not alone. This is why overthinking often intensifies at night. Fatigue lowers resistance. Old beliefs rise. The mind rehearses because it believes it must remain alert. Yet night was given for release, not vigilance. The body longs for rest. The mind resists because it fears relinquishing control. But nothing essential is lost when thought rests. On the contrary, what is essential can only be heard when noise subsides. I have often said that God speaks in the still, small voice. That voice cannot be heard over clamor. Clamor is the sound of mistrust. The first step out of overthinking is not to fight thought, but to question its authority. One must ask quietly, why do I believe I must think about this now? Often there is no answer, only habit. Habit can be changed. The mind must be taught gently that it is not required to carry everything. This affirmation begins that instruction. I am not required to carry the future. Spoken quietly and repeated, it releases pressure. Another useful declaration is, divine intelligence goes before me. These words remove thought from the front line. When the mind hears repeatedly that it is supported, it softens. When it softens, thought slows naturally. One must not demand immediate silence. Silence cannot be forced. It arrives when resistance ends. Resistance is the belief that thought must continue. The overthinking mind fears stillness because it associates stillness with danger. This fear dissolves when stillness is practiced gently. Begin by allowing moments of quiet without explanation, without justification, without guilt. The mind may protest at first. Protest is habit dissolving. I have observed that when people allow quiet even briefly, they feel relief. Relief is the signal that alignment has begun. Relief does not require understanding. It precedes it. As relief deepens, thought becomes clearer rather than duller. Overthinking clouds judgment. Rest sharpens it. Those who rest their minds make better decisions, not fewer. Others sense this clarity. They respond with trust. They feel steadied by your presence. Presence is belief embodied. When the mind rests, the body follows. Breath deepens. Shoulders release. Sleep improves. These are not accidents. They are signs of obedience to law. Law never demands strain. Strain is always a sign that something is being done out of position. The mind's rightful position is receptivity, not surveillance. When the mind returns to this position, peace returns naturally. Peace is not something to be achieved. It is something to be allowed. The overthinking mind has forgotten this allowance. Yet remembrance is simple. It begins the moment you decide not to think your way into safety. Safety does not come from thought alone. It comes from trust. And trust begins when the mind agrees to rest. Remain with this understanding. Do not analyze it. Let it settle. For the moment the mind releases its burden, wisdom moves in effortlessly, and the quiet you seek is already waiting just beyond the need to think. Internal headings. It continues seamlessly after part 1 and is crafted to stand alone as 2,000 plus words. When the mind has begun to see that overthinking is not protection but misplaced responsibility, another truth must be understood clearly. Thinking harder never produces clarity. It may produce activity, but activity is not direction. Many mistake movement of thought for progress. Yet thought driven by fear merely circles the same ground again and again. The mind that overthinks believes that if it can only consider every possibility, it will finally feel safe. Yet safety never arrives through exhaustion. Exhaustion dulls perception. And when perception dulls, guidance cannot be recognized even when it is present. I have often observed that clarity comes suddenly, not gradually. It arrives in a moment of quiet, not in hours of analysis. This is because clarity is not manufactured by thought. It is revealed when thought steps aside. Those who overthink believe that rest must come after resolution. They say, "Once I figure this out, then I will relax." But resolution comes after relaxation, not before. This reversal is the great misunderstanding that keeps the mind endlessly at work. The mind that strives for certainty before peace condemns itself to unrest. Peace is the condition in which certainty forms. I have known many who exhausted themselves with thought, only to discover that the answer arrived the moment they stopped seeking it. It came while walking, while resting, while attending to simple duties. This was not accident. It was obedience to law. Law reveals only what the mind is quiet enough to receive. Overthinking is thought multiplied by doubt. Doubt asks, "What if this goes wrong?" Thought responds by inventing another scenario. Soon the mind is filled with imagined futures, none of which exist. These imagined futures feel real to the body. The heart tightens. The breath shortens. The muscles brace. The body responds as though danger were present. Yet danger exists only in imagination. This is why overthinking is so exhausting. The body cannot distinguish between imagined threat and actual one. Fear rehearsed becomes experience rehearsed. I have often said that imagination is the creative faculty. When imagination is misused, it creates confusion. When it is disciplined, it creates harmony. The overthinking mind misuses imagination by rehearsing trouble. One must understand that imagination, once set in motion, must produce something. The question is not whether it will work, but in which direction. Those who imagine problems invite them. Those who imagine order invite it. Yet the overthinking mind imagines problems not because it desires them, but because it believes it must prevent them. This belief must be corrected. I once knew a woman who spent hours imagining conversations before they occurred. She tried to prepare for every possible response. When the conversation finally happened, none of her imagined scenarios came to pass. Yet she was exhausted, as though they had. Her exhaustion had accomplished nothing. When she learned to say, "I trust the outcome," and to stop rehearsing, her peace returned. Conversations became easier. People responded kindly. Her imagination, once misused, had been corrected. The mind must learn that it is not required to foresee everything. Foresight belongs to divine intelligence. Human thought responds best when it remains present. Presence is power. Overthinking robs the present of its strength by scattering attention across imagined futures. Attention is energy. Where attention goes, energy flows. When energy is scattered, strength diminishes. I have observed that those who think excessively are often the most fatigued, even when doing little outwardly. Their energy has been consumed inwardly. Rest restores energy. Energy restores clarity. Clarity cannot be forced. It must be allowed. Those who attempt to force clarity by thinking harder only push it farther away. The mind is like a pond. When stirred constantly, it remains cloudy. When left undisturbed, it clears on its own. I have often used this image, for it is exact. Stillness clarifies. The overthinking mind fears stillness because it equates stillness with inaction. Yet stillness is not inactivity, it is receptivity. Receptivity is the state in which guidance enters. I have known many who said, "If I stop thinking, I will miss something." Yet what they missed was guidance itself. Drowned by noise. Wisdom does not compete with thought. It waits. Waiting is not delay. It is patience aligned with law. I have seen people make grave errors simply because they could not wait for quiet. They acted from agitation. Later, they said, "I knew better." The knowing had been present, but unheard. Overthinking silences knowing. This is why those who live calmly often appear wise. They hear what others miss. Wisdom is not accumulation of thought. It is discernment. Discernment requires quiet. The overthinking mind believes it must solve everything at once, yet life unfolds step by step. Attempting to see all steps at once overwhelms the mind. Law reveals only the next step. When that step is taken, the next is revealed. Trying to see beyond what is revealed produces confusion. I have often said that faith is the substance of things hoped for. Faith does not demand to see the entire bridge before taking the first step. It trusts that the bridge will appear as needed. Overthinking demands the entire bridge in advance. This demand blocks movement. Movement follows trust. I have observed that those who trust often receive guidance in simple impressions, gentle nudges, or quiet certainty. Those who overthink ignore these signals, waiting for something louder. Guidance is rarely loud. The mind must learn to value simplicity. Complexity often hides doubt. I once knew a man who complicated every decision. He examined endlessly, weighing every possibility. His life stalled. When he learned to wait for peace rather than certainty, decisions became simple. His life moved forward. Peace is the sign of right action. The overthinking mind seeks certainty. The aligned mind waits for peace. Peace never lies. I have noticed that when people act in peace, results follow smoothly. When they act in agitation, correction follows. Correction is not punishment. It is instruction. Overthinking often arises from the fear of making mistakes. This fear paralyzes. Yet mistakes are corrected easily when belief is aligned. Fear of mistake magnifies error. Trust minimizes it. I have seen people recover quickly from errors because they did not condemn themselves. They trusted order to correct. Order responded. The overthinking mind condemns itself constantly. Condemnation drains strength. Strength is restored through trust. The mind must be taught gently that it does not need to solve everything now. This affirmation is helpful. I am shown what I need to know when I need to know it. Repeated calmly, it reassures the mind. Another useful declaration is, I release the need to understand everything at once. These words create space for wisdom. Space is essential. The mind overthinks because it feels crowded. It is crowded with imagined demands, imagined futures, imagined dangers. When space is created, thought settles. Creating space does not require silence immediately. It requires permission. Permission to not think. Many have never given themselves permission to rest their minds. They believe rest must be earned through completion. Yet completion comes through rest. The mind that rests becomes efficient. The mind that strains becomes dull. I have often observed that the most productive people are those who think less, not more. They act decisively because their minds are clear. Clarity is attractive. Others trust clear minds. When the mind rests, speech simplifies. Words become precise. Decisions feel right. Others sense this and respond positively. Life responds to clarity. The overthinking mind feels responsible for everything. The aligned mind knows it is supported. Support quiets thought. This is why overthinking fades when trust takes its place. Trust is not blind. It is based on law. Law never fails. It waits for cooperation. Cooperation begins when the mind steps out of the way. The mind was not designed to lead alone. It was designed to follow guidance. When it follows, it rests. Rest is obedience. Obedience produces harmony. Harmony produces clarity. Clarity produces right action. Right action produces peace. Thus, peace was always the beginning, not the end. Remain with this understanding. Do not attempt to practice it perfectly. Practice gently. Allow moments of quiet without explanation. Let thoughts slow without forcing. For when the mind is no longer driven, it becomes directed. And direction, once restored, makes overthinking unnecessary. The mind, relieved of false duty, becomes once again what it was always meant to be, a faithful servant of divine intelligence. When one has understood that thinking harder does not bring clarity, the next lesson is both simple and exact. The mind must be governed, not suppressed, not punished, not argued with, but governed. Thought is obedient by nature. It follows direction faithfully, whether that direction is wise or foolish. Overthinking persists only because no one has taken command of the gate. I have often spoken of the watchman at the gate of the mind. This watchman does not wrestle with thoughts as they arise. He simply decides which thoughts may enter and which may pass on. Most people suffer because they have mistaken hospitality for wisdom. They invite every thought inside and then complain of the noise. Thoughts are not masters. They are messengers. Some carry truth. Others carry fear disguised as reason. The watchman's task is not to listen to every message, but to recognize which messages carry authority. Overthinking thrives where discernment is absent. Many believe they must think every thought that arises, as though refusal were dangerous. Yet refusing a thought is not denial of reality. It is selection of reality. Reality follows the selected thought, not the rejected one. I have known people who said, "The thoughts just come." Yes, they come, but coming is not commanding. Knocking is not entering. Thought knocks. Attention opens the door. Attention is power. What you attend to grows. What you ignore fades. This is the law many overlook. They attempt to stop thinking by force. Yet force gives attention. What is resisted persists. The watchman does not resist. He declines. There is great peace in declining unnecessary thought. Fearful thoughts often arrive disguised as responsibility. They say, "You must think about this," or "If you ignore this, something will go wrong." These thoughts trade on fear of omission, yet nothing of value is lost by refusing fear. I have observed that when people learn to decline fearful thoughts, their minds grow quieter almost immediately, not because thought has stopped, but because only necessary thought remains. Necessary thought is calm. Unnecessary thought is urgent. Urgency is the hallmark of fear. The watchman must learn to recognize urgency as a signal to refuse entry. One may say quietly, "This thought is not for me now." This statement is not argument. It is command. Command restores order. Many attempt to reason with fearful thoughts. They explain, justify, or counter them. This only gives them further audience. The watchman does not debate. He acts. I once knew a man who lay awake each night rehearsing future troubles. He believed that if he thought through every possibility, he would be prepared. Yet preparation never came, only exhaustion. When he learned to say, "I do not accept this thought," and to turn his attention elsewhere, his nights became peaceful. His affairs improved. The thoughts had lost their authority. Authority lies not in the thought, but in the listener. The mind must be taught, gently but firmly, that not every thought deserves attention. This teaching must be repeated. Repetition impresses the subconscious. The subconscious obeys what is repeated calmly. Many give commands in agitation and wonder why nothing changes. Calm repetition is the secret. The watchman does not shout. He stands. Standing is enough. Thoughts that are not entertained pass quickly. Thoughts that are entertained linger. Overthinking is entertainment of fear. When fear is no longer entertained, it leaves. I have observed that people who overthink often pride themselves on being thorough. They believe they are being conscientious. Yet true conscientiousness is alignment with law, not exhaustion of mind. Law does not require mental strain. The watchman's role is not to stop thought altogether, but to ensure that thought serves purpose. Purpose is always present-focused. Thought that leaps endlessly into the future is out of position. The watchman must say, "Return to now." The present moment contains all guidance needed for the next step. I have known people who said, "If I do not think ahead, I will be careless." Yet those who think ahead excessively often make more errors than those who trust present guidance. This is because fear clouds judgment. Judgment requires calm. Calm arrives when thought is governed. The watchman must also guard against pleasant thoughts that lead nowhere. Daydreaming of trouble-free futures without action is as unproductive as fearing disaster. Both distract from present alignment. The watchman admits only thoughts that serve right action now. Right action is simple. Complexity is often fear disguised as wisdom. I have often said that God is simple. Divine intelligence works through simplicity. Overthinking complicates what law has made plain. The watchman must love simplicity. When simplicity is restored, peace follows. Peace is not absence of thought. It is absence of conflict within thought. Conflict arises when opposing thoughts are entertained equally. The watchman chooses one direction and closes the gate to the other. Choice creates order. Order calms the properish mind. The overthinking mind is often divided. One thought says, trust. Another says, be afraid. When both are entertained, stagnation results. The watchman must choose trust. Choosing trust does not require proof. It creates proof. I have seen many whose lives changed when they stopped indulging fearful speculation. Their outer conditions shifted quickly, not because circumstances changed first, but because belief had. Belief is established through repeated choice of thought. The watchman's work is continual but gentle. He does not grow weary because his task is light. Light work produces light results. The mind grows tired when it fights itself. It rests when direction is clear. Clear direction comes from consistent refusal of fear. Fear thrives on discussion. It weakens in silence. Silence does not mean emptiness. It means absence of unnecessary noise. I have known those who feared silence, believing it dangerous. Yet silence is where guidance enters. The watchman protects silence. Silence is sacred. When silence is protected, intuition strengthens. Intuition speaks softly. It cannot compete with argument. The watchman must ensure that intuition is heard. One learns to recognize intuition by its calm certainty. It does not argue. It does not hurry. It simply knows. Fear always hurries. Hurry is not guidance. I have often advised people to wait until peace returns before acting. Peace is the sign that the watchman has done his work. Action is premature. The watchman must sometimes delay action by refusing thought. Delay guided by peace is not procrastination. It is wisdom. Procrastination is avoidance. Waiting in peace is obedience. The watchman must distinguish between the two. This distinction grows clearer with practice. Practice is simply repetition of refusal and acceptance. Over time, the mind learns which thoughts are welcome. It begins to quiet itself automatically. This is the freedom many seek, but do not find because they try to silence the mind by force, rather than govern it by law. Law governs. Effortlessly. The watchman does not strain. Strain belongs to fear. Fear loses power when refused consistently. I have observed that when people practice this discipline, their minds become orderly. They think when thinking is needed, and rest when it is not. This balance produces strength. Strength attracts confidence from others. People trust those whose minds are orderly. Order is felt. The watchman's work also restores dignity. One no longer feels at the mercy of thought. Thought becomes tool rather than tyrant. This is freedom. Freedom is not absence of thought. It is mastery of thought. Mastery is not force. It is understanding. Understanding grows through experience. Experience is shaped by repetition. Repeat the refusal of fear. Repeat the acceptance of trust. Repeat calm commands such as, I choose peace. This thought is not mine. I trust divine order. These are not affirmations to excite emotion. They are instructions to the subconscious. The subconscious obeys what is spoken calmly and consistently. As obedience is established, overthinking fades. The mind rests more easily. Sleep deepens. Decisions simplify. Life becomes cooperative. All of this begins with the watchman. One must take the position of authority without harshness. Gentle authority is strongest. Stand at the gate. Choose what enters. Let the rest pass by. Thought will obey. And when thought obeys, peace reigns. Peace is the natural state. Overthinking was never your nature. It was habit. Habit can be changed. And when it is, the mind becomes once again what it was always meant to be, an instrument of clarity, not a chamber of noise. Remain faithful to this discipline. Do not grow impatient with progress. Order establishes itself quietly, and soon you will notice something remarkable. Thoughts arrive less frequently, stay shorter, and trouble you less. Not because life has become simpler, but because your mind has become governed. Governance restores rest. Rest restores wisdom. Wisdom restores trust. And trust makes overthinking unnecessary. Thus the watchman fulfills his duty, and the mind is free. When the watchman has been placed at the gate of the mind, and thought is no longer permitted to wander unchecked, a deeper cause of overthinking reveals itself. Beneath restless thought lies an unspoken burden, the belief that outcomes depend upon personal effort alone. This belief presses heavily upon the mind, compelling it to calculate. Until this burden is released, the mind will never fully rest. I have often said that man was never meant to carry his own burdens. He was meant to cast them. Overthinking is the refusal to cast the burden. It is the mind clinging to responsibility out of fear that no one else will take it up. This fear is subtle. It does not shout. It whispers, "If I do not think about this, it will go wrong." And so the mind continues its vigil, mistaking vigilance for duty. Yet vigilance does not protect. It exhausts. The law is exact. What you carry mentally, you carry physically and emotionally. The body bears the weight of mental strain. The heart tires of endless rehearsal. Sleep becomes shallow because the burden has not been laid down. I have seen many who believed they had given their worries to God, yet they continued to think about them night and day. This is not casting the burden. This is visiting it repeatedly. True release is complete. Casting the burden is an act of authority, not emotion. It does not depend upon feeling lighter at once. It depends upon decision. I once knew a woman who prayed constantly for relief from worry, yet she thought about her affairs without ceasing. When I told her to say, "This is not my burden," she hesitated. She feared that if she stopped worrying, she would be careless. Yet worry had never protected her. It had only worn her down. When she finally decided to release responsibility for outcomes, her mind quieted. Her affairs improved. What she had feared losing, she retained. What she had feared failing, succeeded. Fear had been lying to her. Fear always lies about responsibility. Responsibility guided by divine order is light. Responsibility assumed alone is crushing. I have often quoted the words, "Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee." This was not poetic comfort. It was instruction. Instruction must be obeyed exactly. To cast the burden is to stop carrying it in thought, speech, and expectation. One cannot cast while continuing to rehearse. Rehearsal is ownership. Ownership must be released. This release is not passive. It is firm. One must say quietly and without argument, "I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free." These words must be repeated when thought attempts to return to its old task. The mind may protest at first. Protest is habit losing ground. Habits dissolve through repetition. The subconscious accepts what is stated consistently. I have observed that those who truly cast their burdens experience immediate bodily relief. The shoulders drop. The breath deepens. These are not imagined effects. They are signs that alignment has begun. Alignment produces ease. Ease is not neglect. It is trust. The mind that overthinks believes ease is dangerous. This belief must be corrected. Ease is the sign that law is operating. When one is aligned with divine order, effort decreases and results increase. I have known men who labored ceaselessly with anxious minds and saw little progress. I have known others who worked calmly and prospered greatly. The difference was not skill or opportunity, but mental position. Those who cast the burden allow unseen forces to act. Those who carry the burden block assistance. Assistance cannot enter where control is clutched tightly. Control is fear disguised as responsibility. True responsibility knows when to act and when to release. Release is an act of faith. Faith is not belief in outcome alone. It is belief in order. Order arranges details far better than anxious thought ever could. I have often said that God is a master strategist. Man's planning is clumsy by comparison. Yet many insist on planning endlessly, refusing to trust a greater intelligence. Overthinking is an insult to law. Law waits patiently for cooperation. Cooperation begins with release. Release must be practiced. One must notice when thought returns to burden carrying and gently refuse it. One may say, "This has been taken care of." Say it without emotion. Emotion is not required. Authority is. Authority is calm. I have observed that those who release burdens sleep more deeply. Their minds no longer patrol the night. Night becomes restoration again. Night was never meant to be a battlefield. The overthinking mind believes it must stay awake to guard life. Yet life is guarded already. Protection does not come from vigilance. It comes from alignment. Alignment invites protection. I have seen people protected in remarkable ways once they stopped guarding themselves mentally. Fear had told them protection came from worry. Experience proved otherwise. Fear thrives where trust is absent. Trust must be practiced. Practicing trust means allowing outcomes to unfold without constant supervision. This is not indifference. It is confidence. Confidence does not need to watch constantly. The mind that casts its burden gains dignity. It no longer grovels before circumstances. Circumstances respond to dignity. Others sense this change. They feel less need to rescue or advise. They respect calm authority. The one who casts the burden appears poised. Poise is not stiffness. It is freedom from strain. Strain repels assistance. Ease attracts it. I have often said that what you let go of comes back multiplied, if it belongs to you by right. Letting go is not loss. It is alignment. Loss occurs only when fear governs. There is no loss in divine mind. This affirmation must be repeated until it replaces fear-based thinking. The mind resists release because it fears emptiness. Yet emptiness is space. Space invites movement. Movement guided by law is exact. One must trust that what is released is not abandoned, but transferred. Transfer is essential. Fear clings because it believes no one else will carry the load. Yet divine intelligence has carried far greater burdens effortlessly. It carries worlds. Surely it can carry your affairs. Overthinking persists where humility is misunderstood. True humility is acknowledging that one does not need to manage everything. False humility says, "I must suffer through this." True humility says, "This is not mine to carry." The distinction is vital. I have observed that when people release burdens, they often feel strange at first. The absence of tension feels unfamiliar. They may even try to recreate worry out of habit. This is the moment discipline is required. Discipline is not harshness. It is consistency. One must consistently refuse to take back what has been cast. Taking it back is easy. Releasing again is harder. Better to release fully. I have known those who said, "I cast my burden," yet immediately followed the words with worry. Words followed by contradiction lose power. Words must be supported by action. Action here means mental refusal. Refuse to dwell. Refuse to rehearse. Refuse to own. Ownership determines experience. When ownership is released, freedom follows. Freedom allows intuition to function. Intuition guides effortlessly. The overthinking mind blocks intuition by filling space with noise. Release creates silence. Silence invites guidance. I have seen people receive clear direction immediately after releasing worry they had carried for years. The direction had always been there, unheard. When the burden is cast, hearing returns. This is why casting the burden is essential to ending overthinking. One cannot govern thought while believing one must manage everything. The watchman at the gate requires support from release. Release strengthens the watchman. Together they restore order. Order calms the mind. Calm allows trust. Trust dissolves fear. Fear was the fuel of overthinking. Remove the fuel, and the fire goes out. The mind does not need to be forced into silence. It needs to be relieved of false duty. False duty was assumed long ago. It can be relinquished now. Begin tonight. Cast what you have been carrying. Say it calmly. Repeat it when thought returns. Do not argue. Do not explain. Simply release. The law will respond. It always does. And when it does, you will discover that what you feared to let go of was never meant to be carried at all. Peace will replace effort. Order will replace anxiety. And the mind, freed from burden, will finally rest as it was always intended to do. When the burden has been cast and the mind no longer insists upon carrying what does not belong to it, another habit must be gently corrected. The habit of mistrusting order. Overthinking often returns, not because the burden was not released, but because one secretly believes that without constant supervision, life will descend into confusion. This belief stands directly opposed to divine law. Divine order is not an idea. It is a governing intelligence. It arranges events, timings, and meetings with exact precision. Yet many have never trusted it fully. Because order does not announce itself loudly. It works quietly, invisibly, and therefore is often overlooked by those who demand constant reassurance. The overthinking mind assumes disorder. It believes that if it does not intervene, chaos will follow. This belief alone is enough to keep the mind alert and restless. I have often said that man lives under grace, not under strain. Grace implies order without effort. Strain implies mistrust. Those who trust divine order do not live carelessly. They live attentively, but without anxiety. They act when guided, and wait when waiting is required. This balance produces calm authority. I have known many who believed that trust meant passivity. They feared that if they stopped thinking ahead, they would miss opportunities. Yet opportunities do not come through anxiety. They come through alignment. Alignment places one in the right place, at the right time, without forcing. I once knew a woman who constantly feared missing her good. She watched every possibility, questioned every delay, and exhausted herself with anticipation. When she learned to say, "I am always in my right place," her anxiety lessened. Within weeks, she found herself unexpectedly present at a meeting that changed her affairs entirely. Order had been working all along. Order does not hurry. It is exact. The overthinking mind hurries because it mistrusts timing. Timing is sacred. Divine order never arrives late. It never arrives early. It arrives precisely when preparation is complete. Preparation is often inward, not outward. Many believe they must prepare endlessly, outwardly planning, arranging, anticipating, yet neglect inward preparation. Trust. Trust prepares the way. I have observed that those who trust order often experience fewer delays, not more. Their affairs move smoothly because they do not obstruct flow with doubt. Resistance creates delay. Overthinking is resistance disguised as care. The mind that trusts order stops asking, "Why hasn't this happened yet?" That question assumes failure. Trust assumes sequence. Sequence cannot be hurried. I have known those who grew anxious when things did not move according to expectation. They interpreted delay as denial. When they learned that delay often means rearrangement, their peace returned. Peace allowed movement. Movement followed peace. This law is exact. Divine order often requires that something unseen be completed before something visible appears. Overthinking attempts to skip steps. Order insists on sequence. Skipping sequence creates confusion. I have often said that one cannot hurry their good without delaying it. Those who hurry often feel blocked. Those who trust feel guided. Guidance is subtle. The mind must be quiet to perceive it. When the mind trusts order, it no longer tries to solve everything at once. It understands that each step will be shown in turn. This understanding calms thought naturally. Calm is the signal that trust has been accepted. One may affirm quietly, "My good unfolds in perfect order." This affirmation is not a plea. It is an acknowledgement. Acknowledgement strengthens belief. Belief governs experience. I have observed that when people repeat this affirmation consistently, their lives become simpler. Decisions feel easier. Confusion lifts. Others notice this simplicity. They feel steadied by it. Simplicity is attractive. Order produces simplicity. Overthinking produces complexity. Complexity is not intelligence. It is fear's attempt to appear wise. True wisdom is simple. I once knew a man who complicated every decision. Believing complexity proved intelligence. His affairs stagnated. When he learned to wait for simplicity, his progress resumed. Simplicity is the sign of alignment. The overthinking mind distrusts simplicity. It believes simple answers cannot be sufficient. Yet divine intelligence works through simplicity. The mind must be retrained to value ease. Ease does not mean laziness. It means cooperation with law. Cooperation removes friction. Friction produces heat. Heat exhausts. I have often observed that exhaustion follows resistance, not effort. Effort guided by order does not exhaust. Those who trust order act decisively and then rest. Those who mistrust order act anxiously and then worry. Worry follows mistrust. Trust dissolves worry. Trust must be practiced deliberately. One must notice when thought begins to question timing and gently refuse the question. One may say, "This is unfolding as it should." Say it calmly. Calmness is essential. Emotion is not required. Overthinking feeds on emotion. Trust feeds on certainty. Certainty does not shout. Certainty rests. When certainty rests, life moves. I have observed that those who trust order rarely feel rushed. Even when busy, they feel steady. Steadiness communicates authority. Others sense steadiness and respond with cooperation. Life mirrors inner order. When inner order is present, outer events arrange themselves accordingly. I have seen doors open effortlessly for those who trusted timing. I have seen obstacles dissolve when anxiety ceased. These were not miracles. They were correspondence. Correspondence is law. The overthinking mind believes it must anticipate every obstacle. Yet obstacles often dissolve before arrival when trust is present. Fear imagines obstacles into being. Trust dissolves them. I have known people who feared upcoming events for weeks, only to discover the events passed easily. The suffering had occurred only in thought. Thought had been misused. When thought is aligned with order, it ceases to torment. Order is kind. Law is not cruel. Cruelty arises from misunderstanding. Understanding restores peace. The mind that trusts order also stops comparing itself to others. Comparison fuels overthinking by creating false urgency. Each life unfolds according to its own design. Design is unique. Trusting design eliminates envy and impatience. Envy distracts. Patience aligns. Patience is not waiting in sorrow. It is waiting in certainty. Certainty feels calm. Calm reassures the mind. The mind relaxes when it knows it is guided. Guidance is constant, though not always dramatic. The overthinking mind expects guidance to arrive loudly, unmistakably, yet guidance often appears as quiet inclination. One must trust subtlety. Subtlety is powerful. I have often said that intuition whispers. Those who shout mentally cannot hear it. Trusting order quiets the shout. When the shout quiets, the whisper is heard. I have seen people make life-changing decisions based on simple inner knowing once their minds were calm. The decision felt right. That was enough. Peace is the seal of order. Peace never lies. When peace accompanies an idea, it is safe. When agitation accompanies an idea, wait. Waiting is not failure. It is obedience. Obedience to order produces safety. Safety calms the mind. The mind that trusts order stops demanding guarantees. Guarantees belong to fear. Trust belongs to faith. Faith is certainty without proof. Proof follows faith. This sequence must be respected. Overthinking reverses sequence by demanding proof first. Proof withheld until faith is present. This is not punishment. It is protection. Protection prevents premature action. Premature action creates correction. Correction is avoidable through trust. I have observed that when people act prematurely, they often blame circumstances. In truth, impatience was the cause. Trust prevents impatience. Trust slows the mind. A slowed mind perceives accurately. Accuracy produces right action. Right action produces peace. Thus, peace was always the aim. Trusting divine order is essential to ending overthinking permanently. Thought rests naturally. Trust must be reaffirmed daily, not through struggle, but through acknowledgement. Say often, I am under grace, in perfect ways. This affirmation dissolves the fear of disorder. Grace implies guidance without strain. Strain is unnecessary. Life is not chaotic. It is responsive. It responds to belief. Believe in order. Order will appear. As belief strengthens, overthinking fades. The mind becomes quieter, clearer, more efficient. Others will notice the difference. They will say, you seem calm, certain, and composed. They will feel safe in your presence. This is not personality. It is alignment. Alignment produces authority. Authority without force is power. And power, once reclaimed, makes overthinking unnecessary. For when order is trusted, the mind finally knows it is not alone and can rest at last. When divine order is trusted, and the mind no longer strains to supervise life, a new faculty awakens naturally, the faculty of intuition. Intuition is not something to be developed through effort. It is something uncovered when noise subsides. Overthinking drowns intuition, not because intuition is weak, but because it is quiet. I have often spoken of the still small voice, for it is exact in description. Guidance does not shout across confusion. It does not argue with fear. It waits patiently until the mind is willing to listen, and listening requires stillness. Many believe they lack intuition. In truth, they lack quiet. The intuitive faculty has always been present, operating beneath thought, waiting for space. When the mind steps aside, intuition steps forward without ceremony. Overthinking fills every opening with commentary. It explains, predicts, and questions. Yet intuition does not speak in explanations. It speaks in knowing. Knowing is immediate. It does not reason itself into certainty. It arrives whole. I have observed that those who overthink often distrust their first impression. They second guess, analyze, and revise until clarity is lost. Yet, the first calm impression is often correct. The agitation that follows is fear, attempting to regain control. Fear always arrives after intuition, never before. This is why overthinking often begins just after guidance is received. The mind, unused to surrender, rushes in to evaluate what intuition has already settled. Evaluation is unnecessary. When peace is present, peace is the seal of guidance. I have known many who received a quiet inner direction, only to talk themselves out of it through overthinking. Later they said, "I knew better." Yes, they did. The knowing was present. It was simply ignored. Intuition does not repeat itself loudly. If ignored, it waits. Meanwhile, thought continues to argue. The mind must learn to recognize peace as instruction. Instruction does not come with urgency. Urgency belongs to fear. When guidance is true, it feels calm, even when it leads into unknown territory. I have often said that faith moves before proof. Intuition is the movement of faith within consciousness. It does not require explanation. Those who trust intuition appear decisive, not because they know everything, but because they know enough. Enough is all that is required. Overthinking demands total understanding before action. Intuition offers the next step only. The next step is sufficient. I once knew a man who overthought every decision. He waited for certainty that never came. When he learned to act on calm knowing rather than exhaustive analysis, his life advanced rapidly. Opportunities appeared that would have been missed had he waited. Waiting for certainty is often fear in disguise. Waiting for peace is wisdom. Intuition always arrives with peace. If peace is absent, wait. Waiting without agitation allows intuition to clarify. Overthinking during waiting obscures clarity. I have often said that one must stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Standing still does not mean inactivity. It means cessation of mental interference. Mental interference blocks perception. Perception sharpens in quiet. When the mind rests, perception expands. Expanded perception reveals patterns, connections, and timing that thought could not compute. This is why solutions often appear suddenly after rest. Rest invites revelation. Revelation does not respond to demand. Those who demand answers rarely receive them. Those who allow receive quietly. Allowing requires trust. Trust has already been cultivated through casting burdens and trusting order. Now trust must extend to inner guidance. Many fear intuition because it feels too simple. They believe important decisions must feel heavy. Yet heaviness is not wisdom. It is fear. Guidance is light. I have known women who ignored gentle inner guidance because it seemed impractical, only to discover later that it would have saved them great effort. Intuition often leads to simplicity. The mind prefers complexity. Complexity makes the mind feel important. Simplicity makes the mind obedient. Obedience restores order. Intuition must be obeyed to be strengthened. Disobedience weakens it. I have often said that intuition is the voice of divine intelligence, individualized. It speaks according to divine design. Design is unique to each person. Comparing guidance to another's path confuses intuition. The overthinking mind compares endlessly. Comparison silences guidance. One must listen inwardly without reference to others. Others cannot know your design. Design unfolds through intuition. When the mind is quiet, Intuition guides step by step. Step by step guidance prevents overwhelm. Overthinking overwhelms by demanding the entire map. The map is revealed gradually. This gradual revealing is mercy. Mercy prevents fear. Fear seeks control. Control blocks mercy. I have seen people act courageously on simple inner guidance and be supported in unexpected ways. Support arrived because alignment was present. Alignment invites provision. Provision does not require worry. The mind often fears that if it stops planning, it will be unprepared. Yet preparation through intuition is exact. Exact preparation feels effortless. Overthinking prepares for many possibilities. Intuition prepares for the right one. Right preparation conserves energy. Conserved energy restores vitality. Vitality improves perception. Perception improves guidance. Thus, rest leads to action, not stagnation. I have observed that when intuition is trusted, decisions feel complete. There is no lingering doubt. One may not know the outcome, but one knows the direction. Intuition offers alignment. Alignment produces assurance naturally. The mind that trusts intuition does not rush to explain its choices. It does not need approval. Approval seeking weakens guidance. Inner approval strengthens it. I have known people who appeared reckless to others, yet prospered because they followed intuition. Others followed advice and failed. Advice is not guidance. Guidance is personal. The overthinking mind collects advice endlessly, hoping to eliminate uncertainty. Yet advice often multiplies confusion. Intuition simplifies. Simplicity clarifies. Clarity produces confidence. Confidence attracts cooperation. Others respond favorably to those who act from inner certainty. They sense steadiness. Steadiness is power. Power does not shout. Power rests. Intuition rests in the present moment. It cannot be found in future speculation. Speculation is the enemy of intuition. Speculation feeds. Overthinking. One must refuse speculation. Refusal creates space. Space invites knowing. I have often advised people to sit quietly when confused, not to think, but to listen. Listening requires patience. Patience is trust expressed in time. Time works with trust, not against it. Those who rush intuition receive confusion. Those who wait receive clarity. Waiting does not mean delay forever. It means allowing the signal to strengthen. Signals strengthen in silence. I have observed that when people begin to trust intuition, overthinking fades without effort. The mind no longer feels alone. It feels guided. Guidance relieves pressure. Pressure is what drives overthinking. When pressure is gone, thought settles naturally. The body also responds. Tension releases. Breath deepens. Energy returns. These are signs that intuition has assumed its rightful role. Intuition was never meant to compete with thought. It was meant to lead it. Thought follows intuition well. Thought leads intuition poorly. This order must be restored. Restore intuition as leader. Let thought serve. Service produces harmony. Harmony produces peace. Peace sustains clarity. Clarity invites success. Success follows alignment, not strain. I have seen people succeed quietly once they trusted intuition. Their lives appeared simple from the outside. Inside, order reigned. This is the natural state. The mind was never meant to live in noise. Noise was learned. Quiet must be relearned. Relearning requires patience and repetition. Repeat affirmations such as, I am divinely guided. I trust my inner knowing. Speak them calmly. Calm repetition impresses the subconscious. The subconscious obeys without argument. As obedience is established, intuition becomes more reliable. Reliability builds trust. Trust reduces thought. Thus, the cycle completes. Overthinking dissolves, not because it is fought, but because it is no longer needed. The mind rests because guidance has taken over. Guidance moves effortlessly. Life responds favorably, and what once felt confusing becomes clear, simple, and safe without a single thought forced into place. When intuition has taken its rightful place and the mind no longer clamors for control, a quiet transformation settles into daily life. One no longer struggles to stop overthinking, for there is nothing left to struggle against. The mind, relieved of false duty, rests naturally. What once required discipline now occurs without effort, because belief has been corrected at its root. I have observed that people often fear what life will be like without constant mental activity. They imagine emptiness, carelessness, or loss of ambition. Yet what appears instead is steadiness. Life becomes simpler, not smaller. Action becomes precise, not diminished. One moves with assurance rather than urgency. Overthinking fades when trust becomes habit. Habit is powerful. It governs behavior without effort. When trust replaces vigilance as habit, peace becomes the natural state. Peace no longer feels like something to protect or maintain. It simply is. This is the point at which one lives from alignment rather than reaction. When aligned, the mind thinks when thought is required and rests when it is not. There is no longer the constant background noise of anticipation. Thought becomes purposeful. Silence becomes comfortable. I have often said that peace is power. This is not a poetic statement. It is exact. Peace preserves energy. Energy directed calmly produces greater results than energy scattered through anxiety. Those who live without overthinking appear unhurried. Others sense this and respond differently to them. Conversations slow. Decisions feel easier. Resistance dissolves. Life responds to inner order. When the inner state is orderly, outer events arrange themselves accordingly. I have seen individuals who once lived in constant mental strain become composed and confident. Their circumstances did not improve first. Their belief did. Circumstances followed faithfully. This is the law of correspondence. The mind that no longer overthinks, no longer narrates every experience. It observes without commentary. Observation without commentary is clarity. Clarity brings right action effortlessly. One no longer asks, "What should I do?" with anxiety. One waits quietly until direction appears. Direction always appears when needed. This waiting is not passive. It is alert without tension. Alertness without tension is mastery. Mastery is not domination. It is harmony. The overthinking mind was in conflict with itself. Harmony dissolves conflict. Those who have lived long in mental conflict may find peace unfamiliar at first. They may even miss the old noise, mistaking it for aliveness. Yet true aliveness feels calm, not frantic. Calm allows enjoyment. Enjoyment returns when thought no longer interferes with experience. I have observed that people who stop overthinking begin to notice beauty again. They see what was always present but overlooked. This is not sentimentality. It is presence restored. Presence strengthens intuition. Intuition guides daily affairs quietly. Guidance removes fear of mistake. Mistakes lose their power when trust is present. They are corrected easily, without self-condemnation. Self-condemnation was a fuel for overthinking. Without it, thought softens. The mind that trusts no longer needs to rehearse defense. It does not brace itself against imagined harm. Bracing was never protection. It was strain. When strain ends, vitality returns. Vitality attracts opportunity. Opportunity arrives naturally when one is receptive. Receptivity replaces vigilance. Vigilance assumed danger. Receptivity assumes order. Assumption determines experience. Those who assume order find it. Those who assume danger find confirmation. This is why belief is the foundation. Belief has now been corrected through practice. The belief that one must think constantly to be safe has been replaced with the understanding that safety comes from alignment. Alignment does not require effort. It requires agreement. Agreement must be maintained gently. One maintains agreement by noticing when old habits attempt return and refusing to indulge them. Old habits weaken quickly when not fed. Feeding requires attention. Attention is choice. Choice restores authority. Authority without force is peace. I have seen people whose very presence changed once they stopped overthinking. Others trusted them instinctively. Their words carried weight. Their silence carried reassurance. This was not personality change. It was alignment. Alignment always communicates confidence. Confidence invites respect. Respect is given naturally, not demanded. Those who live calmly often become leaders without trying. Others seek their counsel because they feel steadied by their presence. This is the quiet influence of peace. Peace teaches without speaking. The mind that has learned to rest does not return to old habits easily. It remembers the relief. It remembers the ease. Ease is persuasive. Once ease is known, strain loses its appeal. One must remain loyal to ease. Loyalty to ease is not indulgence. It is obedience to law. Law never demands strain. Strain was learned. Learning can be unlearned. This unlearning occurs naturally when the mind trusts. Trust has been cultivated step by step. First, responsibility was released. Then thought was governed. Then order was trusted. Then intuition was obeyed. Now peace remains. Peace must be honored. Honor peace by refusing unnecessary thought. Honor peace by resting without guilt. Honor peace by acting only when guided. Guided action is effective. Effectiveness builds confidence. Confidence reinforces trust. Thus the cycle sustains itself. I have often said that what you practice becomes permanent. Practice here is simple. When thought arises without purpose, let it pass. When concern attempts return, release it. When urgency appears, wait. When peace is present, act. These simple movements sustain freedom. Freedom from overthinking is not emptiness. It is fullness without noise. Noise had disguised itself as importance. Silence reveals what matters. What matters is always simple. I have observed that when people stop overthinking, they also stop explaining themselves unnecessarily. Explanation often serves to soothe fear. Without fear, explanation is not required. Simplicity returns to speech. Simplicity returns to action. Life becomes lighter. Lighter does not mean trivial. It means unburdened. Unburdened movement is swift. Swift movement, guided by peace, appears effortless. Effortlessness is the sign of alignment. Alignment produces results that appear fortunate to others. Others may say, things work out for you. They are correct. Things work out when thought no longer interferes. Interference was never necessary. I have known many who feared they would lose ambition if they stopped overthinking. Instead, their ambition purified. It became desire aligned with purpose, not fear. Purpose is steady. Fear is restless. Steadiness outlasts restlessness. Those who live steadily achieve more over time. Time cooperates with peace. Peace extends time. Anxious minds feel time slipping away. Calm minds experience time as sufficient. Sufficiency replaces scarcity. Scarcity fueled overthinking. Sufficiency dissolves it. One must remember that overthinking was never a moral failing. It was a misunderstanding of responsibility and trust. Misunderstandings dissolve when truth is applied. Truth here is simple. You were never meant to carry everything in thought. Thought was meant to assist, not dominate. Now it assists again. The mind has returned to its rightful place. In this place, it rests easily. Rest produces clarity. Clarity guides action. Action produces harmony. Harmony confirms trust. Trust sustains peace. Peace becomes your atmosphere. Atmosphere shapes experience. Experience confirms belief. Thus the circle completes. Remain in this understanding. Do not look back to see if overthinking has truly gone. Looking back invites it. Live forward, live present, live quietly, confident. The mind will follow. It always does. And in this way, without struggle and without force, you will discover that what once felt like endless thinking has dissolved into simple knowing. Knowing does not argue. Knowing rests. And in rest, everything finds its proper place.